right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. So this has been just an absolute blast of a month so far. We've had lots of events where we focused on the Arctic, and our last few events, we have been talking about polar bears. And I'm so excited for today. Today, we're connecting with the amazing women from Hearts in the Ice live from Svalbard. So in 2019-2020, Sunniva Sorby and Hilda Strom made history when they became the first women to overwinter in Svalbard solo. They spent 12 months at the remote trappers cabin Bamsebu, located at 78 degrees north and 148 kilometers from the closest town of Yarnbyen in Svalbard. Climate change is not taking a break, so neither are they. They're returning to Svalbard. They returned to Svalbard in November and will be overwintering at Bamsebu until May 2021. So together with a team of global partners, Hearts in the Ice is a bridge between science and global citizens to better understand climate change and why we all need to play a participatory role. So they will continue to serve as citizen scientists on a variety of projects, from observing clouds and auroras to flying drones to monitor ice and collecting phytoplankton samples as they build on their second year of data collection. So if you joined us last week, you know that we talked about polar bears denning. So we talked about the mothers and the cubs and how they den. We had an amazing team from Polar Bears International join us, so a huge shout out to them. That was great. And also a huge shout out to our sponsors, Canada Goose, who are generously making these events possible for classrooms this month. All right, we're going to take a trip live to Svalbard now. I have Hilda and Sunniva live via satellite phone. They're pretty far north, so the connection doesn't always cooperate, but today it sounds like we have a great one. So Hilda and Sunniva, how are you doing today?
Woohoo! Hi, everybody. We're doing great. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, it's so good to hear you loud and clear. We're excited to talk about polar bears today. I've got some pictures to share, but for now, give us a little intro. Let us know a little bit about yourselves and what you're up to.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hilde here. Well, we are back at Bamsebu for the second winter, as you said, Joe, and this winter is really different from last winter. So climate change is having a great impact here in the Arctic. And this winter is very mild. We don't have any ice on the sea yet, which is unfortunate for the polar bears that are hunting seals for their main food source. And we've also had quite a bit of rain this winter. Last winter, it was cold and nice, how it's supposed to be up here in the Arctic. But we have seen now for the last 10 years that it's really changing. So now this winter we have a lot of ice on the ground, which is really bad for the reindeers. And around the hut here now, it's completely pitch black. We are very close to the North Pole. There are no sunlight. It's way beyond the horizon. So me and Sunniva is more or less walking in the blind. We have a little equipment with us. It's a thermal night vision scope that actually can see in the dark. So maybe you, Joe, can show them the picture that I took from Sunniva and two reindeers behind her. None of us could actually see the reindeers behind Sunniva without this scope. So they are close, but this particular device gives us an opportunity to see in the dark. And here you can see that they are actually struggling to get through the ice layer down to their food plants in order to eat. So they are having a really hard time these days. But you can also show them the other picture, Joe. We met two polar bears on a distance maybe 700-800 meters more than a week ago. And we spotted them just passing us. Luckily, they were not interested in us, but we can just imagine that they are also struggling because of the lack of the ice. So maybe we should tell them a little bit soon about what we are doing in this dark season.
Hey, everybody. So I just wanted to share a question that, and Hilde touched on it, that one of the students shared recently, and They asked, why in the world is it so dark up here all the time, 24/7? And it has to do with the fact, and you should take out your globe later and run this little experiment, that the sun is actually greater than 6 degrees below the horizon right now. So we won't see the sun until February. Try to imagine that. So this night vision scope that Hila was talking about, where you saw those photos, are really important for us because when we go outside, we can't see. And the only way we can see is through that little scope. So we have been busy here. We train 6 days a week. We've been doing yoga. We are rotating our food so it doesn't freeze and the fresh food lasts long. We're trying to ration our potato chips because we both love potato chips. And we are doing citizen science projects. We were out in a kayak last week, actually, and paddling our kayaks and collecting some phytoplankton samples. And we do take a camera out, even though it's cold, with our tripod and all of our equipment and safety belt, and we take photos of the aurora. We take what we call time-lapse photography, and it's a really, really fun thing for all of you out there that are interested in looking up at the sky. It's amazing what a camera can capture. So we're doing that for NASA. We can't see the clouds now, but we can see the northern lights. And we're also flying our infrared drones. This is also a little device. I'm sure all of you know drones, but this thing runs in a pre-programmed flight and measures the surface and sea ice temperature over a period of time. So we've been busy doing things, but we are in this little cabin, which is, if you're in Canada, you're on the metric system, it's 20 square meters. And if you're not in Canada and you're in the US, it's about 215 square feet. So pretty tiny little space. So for all of you out there that are sort of spending a lot of time at home now with your parents or maybe in a small classroom, you can understand what that's like. So send us questions via email when we're done with this call. But also, we look forward to your questions at the end of the presentation from Jon Aars, because that for us has been like the golden little thread. So over to you, Joe, but I do want to do a little shout out. This connection today is unbelievable. And Marlink is our data provider for the satellite, which is the only way we can connect with all of you out there. And then, as you mentioned, Joe, Canada Goose, they've been hugely supportive, along with Polar Bears International, providing all sorts of, and I know Jon Aars is affiliated with PBI as well, Polar Bears International, and there are lots of great ways to get engaged and understand what in the world is going on in the Arctic. But let's, without further ado, back to you, Joe. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, so great to hear your voices, and so great to catch up a little bit and hear a little bit about what you've been up to. All right, as you mentioned, we do have a special guest today who's going to take us into the world of his polar bear research. So today we're really excited to be joined by Dr. Jon Aars. He is a senior researcher who is responsible for the polar bear research program at the Norwegian Polar Institute. Jon spends a lot of time in the field, which is his favorite thing about his job. He loves being out, experiencing nature in Svalbard under all weather conditions. So one part of the work that he does do is tracking polar bears by satellite. So I'm sure we're going to learn a little bit maybe about that today. You can tell lots of things about the sea ice, how they're adapting to climate change. So let's bring Jon in live with us. Hey, Jon, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm quite a bit further south than those girls at Bamsebu. It's like, they're halfway between me and the North Pole. So I'm in the very, very north of Norway. Still dark here, though. It's like 2 months without sun instead of 4 months. So a bit better.
All right. Very cool. Well, Jon, I know you have a little bit of a presentation to share with some images for us, maybe a little bit of video. But before you jump into that, I want to ask, how did you end up doing what you do, researching polar bears?
Oh, that was quite random, I would say. You know, I liked biology. I started working with small mammals and did that for many years. And I just applied for different jobs. And the one I got was working with polar bears. This was back in 2003. So that's what I've done for 17, 18 years now.
All right, very cool. Well, I'm going to bring your screen share back up here. Jon, if you want to pop up the PowerPoint, I'll let you take over for a bit. And then classrooms who are tuning in via YouTube, let's keep the chat bar to questions now so I can find them easily. And then we've got live camera classrooms who are going to ask some questions too. So we're looking forward to some questions for Hilda and Sunniva about life in the trapper's cabin. And then, of course, questions for Jon about the polar bear. So Jon, I'll let you take it away.
Yes. So what I was thinking I could do was to show you a few slides and to illustrate a bit what we're doing. So the main thing we're doing is that every year in most of April, 4 or 5 weeks usually, we're out trapping polar bears to try to find out different things about them, taking samples, and see how well they are doing, put on colors so we can follow them and so on. So this is a polar bear from Svalbard. I just jump over a lot of pictures. This picture here is showing something important. It's showing that sea ice is disappearing in the Svalbard area. So if you look at the green stuff, it's where you used to have good sea ice, good habitat, but all the red stuff to the right there in early 2000 and closer to now is where sea ice had disappeared. So we have actually lost several months of time with sea ice around Svalbard. So that's what they see at Bamsebu now when it's no sea ice, a time of year where it used to be. So things really change. This is a map from Svalbard too, which just shows a lot of open water. And you see the sea ice is quite far north of Svalbard. And it used to be only 20, 30 years ago, it almost always used to be sea ice around Svalbard the whole year. So this has changed a lot. All the red dots here are different polar bears in Svalbard. So this is from 3 years ago. But it's much like it would look today. That you can see that all the bears, they are on land and not on the sea ice because it's no sea ice there. So other bears will be up in the sea ice, but those in Svalbard, they don't have any choice. They have to be on land. See a picture here of a mother with 2 small cubs. This is polar bear male and female. One interesting thing with polar bears is that the male is much bigger than the female. I don't know if you see it that easily from the picture here, but the male is the one to the right. And he will weigh about twice as much as the female. This is from the time of year where polar bears mate. This is the helicopter we use when we capture polar bears. So it's probably not so easy to see, but my colleague is sitting in the door there with a rifle, and he would dart the polar bear. So the polar bear falls asleep and we can work with it. This is a couple of ships that we often have used as a base when we do polar bear work in Svalbard. So both of these ships, they have a deck that you can land with a helicopter. And the helicopter is an important tool for us when we do research. This figure here is showing how we can find out if bears are in den and give birth or not. So you see that those red boxes there to the right, they tell when it's like warm inside the den, and you can also use light. And this is data from a collar. So you see the bear there has got a collar around the neck. And from looking at whether or not they move and how warm it is and how active they are, you can find out when they are denning. I don't know if you heard, but brown bears, they go into den each winter. Polar bears are different. You maybe learned this last week, did you? I don't know. Anyway, when polar bears go into den for a long period, like a couple of months or more, it is because they give birth to cubs. So you can use the color, the data, to tell that they have been denning. So here you can see period in winter, the last 2 figures there, you see it's like a flat curve, means the bears are not moving. And you can see temperature, the next to the top figure, you see it's a period there where temperature is high, that's inside the den. And at the same time, activity is very low because the bear is actually not moving. So then we get data for when the bears are in den. Similar here, we can also see from activity and temperature when they actually get children, when the cubs get born in midwinter. This figure here is showing something very important for polar bears in Svalbard. You can be there in April and you can capture 2 females and they look exactly the same, more or less to us at least. But then they could be very local, like the one to the upper left there, which was in this tiny area of Svalbard for a whole year for a polar bear. And the other one could walk over to Russia many, many hundred kilometers. So bears do very, very different things. And we have about maybe 300 bears that stay in Svalbard year round, but maybe up to 3,000 that are in the area between Western Russia and Svalbard. So they have very different ways to live. This figure here is showing 5 generations of polar bears. So it's like a family tree. And so you can see all the red boxes here, that's females, and the blue one are males. And we get this family tree by a combination of genetics that you can tell, okay, this is the mother of this bear and so on. And capture, where you captured like a female with a cub, then you know, of course, that the cub is together with the mother. So this is 5 different generations from early 1990s. And then you can see all these black dots on the map there. You can see where they have been captured, and you can actually see that those bears use more or less the same area in Svalbard. So they're very, very local, some of them, if they're not like the type that walks over to Russia. Polar bears are good swimmers, and they're also good at diving. So this polar bear actually was diving underneath the ice, I think, to get away from our helicopter. And they can dive down to 14 meters, so quite deep. And they can swim up to several hundred kilometers. So these arrows here are showing long swims for polar bears. So this one bear swam a couple of 100 kilometers to get up to the sea ice. And then small cubs, they don't like cold water a lot. So this one is cheating, sitting on the back of the mother when the mother is swimming. Here is another figure showing long swim. So the straight long lines there are distances that bear have been swimming. So you can see that longest straight line there from one island up to the white part there, which is sea ice, is actually 270 kilometers, which is a far, far distance. And that took that bear more than 3 days to swim. They didn't need to do this 30 years ago when you had sea ice down to Svalbard, but now they quite frequently swim very long distances. I think I'll cut it there. Then I'll show you some slides to illustrate some of the work we're doing, because I probably almost used my 10 minutes. Okay?
Sounds good.
You got all that? Did you?
Yeah, that was great. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell something more about something, or shall we just go to some questions maybe? Because if people... Yeah.
Let's jump into the Q&A action, because we have a very busy chat right now. We have hundreds and hundreds of groups tuning in via the chat. We've got camera classrooms. So let's jump to some Q&A action, because I bet you we're going to answer a lot of questions about polar bears and their different habits. So in the chat sidebar, let's keep it to some questions. So we can ask Hilda and Sunniva about what they're doing at the trapper's cabin, the citizen science work, you know, what it's like to be isolated so far north. And then of course, Jon can answer probably any and every question about polar bears and their habits. So let's get started here. Here's an interesting one. So we have someone here who's curious via the YouTube about how long polar bears can hold their breath. Do they actually dive down sometimes?
Yes. I think maybe the longest dive that has been like published is 3 minutes or something. But I would not be surprised if they can be actually underwater for longer than that too. But it was one publication a couple of years ago where somebody observed a polar bear diving, and it was underwater for, I think, more than 3 minutes. Given that even humans have a record that is a bit longer, I would be surprised if polar bears actually can't do it longer than that too, if they need to. Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Let's bring in a camera classroom here. Let's see. Let's start off. Let's go to Kelowna, British Columbia. We have a big group hanging out with us with Miss Bedouin. Let me bring them in and give them a chance to say hi. How are we doing today, Kelowna? There they are. Hey, everyone.
Come on up. Stand up. How long do they live for, Magnus asks?
The polar bear in nature that has the record, and it's actually two different bears, one from Canada and one from Alaska, was 32 years old last time they were captured. But in a zoological garden, there have been a polar bear that have been more than 40 years old. They don't live often to a high age like 30 years in nature. I mean, it's captured several thousand polar bears, and not many get more than 25 years old.
All right. I've grabbed another question here via YouTube. This is from Maddie. What is the largest polar bear that you've tagged?
I have never measured the body weight of any polar bear that have been, I think, much more than 500 kilos, but I think I captured one that I think likely was more than 600 once that we didn't weigh. Big male.
Okay, wow, 500 to 600 kilos. So you can pretty much double that, a little bit more when you put it into pounds. That's
probably almost 1,300 pounds, I would say. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. Let's bring in another live classroom here. Let's see. Here we go. Let's go to Thunder Bay, Ontario. Some fourth graders hanging out with us. Let me bring them in live. How we doing, fourth graders?
Hi. Okay, we had a couple questions. So some we think we can answer ourselves, but what do polar bears eat, and has their diet had to change with climate change? So with it being harder to travel, have you seen changes in what they've been eating?
Yeah, so the main food for a polar bear is seals. And there are several species of seals, but ringed seals and bearded seals are the two most important. And those seal species, they live where you have sea ice. So that's why polar bears also like sea ice. And we think that polar bears are dependent on seals because you don't find polar bears anywhere where you don't have sea ice part of the year. But they do also eat other things. They eat almost everything if they get something, you know. So, and because you have less sea ice, you also see that polar bears use more time on land. And thus you have seen many places that polar bears also eat more things that you find on land. And that could be everything from small rodents to birds, eggs, plants. They also eat kelp in sea. Yeah, they eat almost everything.
All right. So Hilda and Sunniva, I want to bring you in on this one because I know, early on in your stay last year, you noticed some interesting polar bear predation going on.
Yes, we did. It was a polar bear that we were out walking with Etra, and this was in November last year. And we all of a sudden saw something move in front of us. And surely enough, that was the polar bear that we took our hut the day before. And it had, we came over there. We just wanted to look at the prints from it. We were walking with Etra and came over there, and it was a freshly killed reindeer that it had been hunted by the polar bear on a little ridge just above the reindeer. So it happens, and we have stayed in contact with Jon, and Jon has seen this before. But it's so once in a while that happens, that the polar bears are killing reindeers. But it's the climate change is happening too fast, and a reindeer is not. It's far away from the same food source and fat source as the seal can give a polar bear.
Okay, and then you mentioned Etra. Can you tell us a little bit about Etra and the important role she usually plays up at the cabin?
Yeah, Etra is 40 kilos Malamute. She's a she, and she is sleeping outside the hut. It's too warm for her to stay inside, and she tells us, alerts us, and barks when we have a polar bear coming up close. And she have had, but she's very happy to sleep. So she has had a couple of very close encounters with the polar bear at the size, as Jon just mentioned, around 600 kilos, sniffing on her. And then she woke up and barked and told us there was a polar bear outside.
All right. So I'm going to bring up another question here. This is via YouTube, and a classroom is wondering, what important role do polar bears play in the ecosystem, in the Arctic ecosystem?
The polar bear is what you call like a top predator. So it's like they eat a lot of other animals, and particularly seals, as I told. And that means also that they will have an impact of how many seals you will have, and the seals eat fish, and fish eat smaller animals in the sea, and so on. So polar bears are a part of a large ecosystem, and if you remove the polar bear, then a lot of other things will happen with the ecosystem. So you actually have fewer different species of predators that eat other animals in high Arctic than you have many other places. And then maybe also polar bears in some way have more important role, because on the mainland, many places you have many other predators that have different functions, but do a lot of the same thing, take a lot of the same animals. For some animals in Svalbard, polar bears are the main predator, the main enemy that can come and eat them.
All right, I'm going to bring Miss Metternock's group in, fifth graders. Calgary, how are we doing, fifth graders?
Good.
All right, we're ready.
How fast can polar bears swim? How fast can polar bears swim?
Oh,
how fast?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how fast they swim. I know that if they swim long distances, they don't make more than 3 kilometers per hour. That's like 2 miles boat. I'm sure they can probably swim I would say at least 4 miles or 6 kilometers per hour, shorter distances, maybe even a bit faster. They don't swim very, very fast, but they can swim for 200-300 kilometers, with a steady trot. Then they would not do 3 kilometers per hour, but maybe 2 kilometers per hour or something for 2-3 days.
That's absolutely incredible. Jon, I imagine there's research going on now to kind of figure out how they navigate when they're swimming in the water like that for hundreds of kilometers.
And it's an interesting question. I think it's the same as for a lot of other animals, that we don't know exactly how they navigate, but we do know that they do, and that they are knowing exactly where they are all the time, or at least a lot of the time, because you see that they hit the place they want, so they get back to land. They can be hundreds of kilometers away, and they return to the same area in Svalbard, or they hit an island in Russian Arctic. So it seems like they are able to navigate, and of course, because you have currents and so on, they wouldn't always go for a straight line, but they're pretty good at finding a good route. So they do have clues, and if it's like magnetism or stars and sun or whatever it is, likely it's a combination of several things.
All right, very cool. I'm going to bring another question here from YouTube, Hilda and Sunniva. We have Susan tuning in, and she would like to know, what does it feel like to be in 24-hour darkness? How are you, coping and keeping yourself busy?
Great question, Susan. We are staying busy, and that's actually one really good way to cope in the dark, because it makes you sleepy. There's no real light around us. It's just artificial light, and it's usually quite low light. And so we keep a schedule, not like very, very firm, but we do make sure we go for a walk every day. We write every day. We both read. We listen to music. We do exercise. We've been doing yoga every day, and also training with these orange bands called Train Anywhere, Anytime. And it kicks our for 30 minutes to do those exercises in addition to yoga. And we do research. We're planning a lot. We're making sure we have all our equipment outside when the wind kicks up, completely battened down, because if the weather changes, the wind changes here so very quickly. And we're making sure we have enough wood inside. We're making sure the food is rotated, because if it's too cold outside and food freezes, then we can't use it. So it's inside, and we rotate it in different places. So it's very old school here. It's a very simple lifestyle, but everything we're doing requires 100% of our focus and attention, and it's actually very gratifying.
All right, very cool. And Jon, do you go out in the field when it's 24-hour darkness, or do you kind of pause the field season when it's like that?
No, we're not out this time of year at all. I've been in Svalbard a couple of times, when suddenly you have some issues with bears, and I've been out with the governor there and so on. But we do not do field work this time of year, because it's not easy. It's because it's dark. You can't fly a helicopter to find the bears and so on. And the bears are also less active, so it's less you can do. Many of them are, of course, inside dens and so on. So there are several reasons why we do not, but the main thing, of course, is the light. So what we do know is that we let the bears actually provide data for us instead. So the bears are doing the work themselves, and that's why we have collars on them. And the bears call every day and tell what they're doing and how they are. So that's the way it works. So I have more than 20 bears now that call every day and tell if they're okay.
All right, that's very cool. Not a lot of people can say they're getting calls from polar bears and getting that information from them. Very cool.
Yeah, they have problems holding a telephone, of course. So what you do is that it is actually a telephone. It's the same, the iridium telephone that they are using from Bamsebu now, but to help the polar bears, it's built into the collar, and it's like an automated system. So once every day, it's made a call from that telephone, and it tells, if it's swimming, how warm it is, how active the bear is, and where it is.
That's very cool. We hosted some events earlier in the month around big cats, and they're using a similar technology where it warns the village that there's big cats around. They get text messages, so they can bring their livestock in and such. So that's really neat, being able to use technology that way.
Yeah, and we have, I don't know if you heard about problem bears that are not so nice. And some of them, might get close to Longyearbyen and even be dangerous. So it was this summer was one polar bear that actually killed a man close to Longyearbyen. Actually a bear that we captured as a small cub 3 years earlier. And his mother she is often close to Longyearbyen, and the collar is set the way that if she gets very close, less than about 15 miles from Longyearbyen, she starts calling much more frequent. She calls every 4 hours instead of once per day. So the governor can know where she is all the time.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to bring in Mr. Kurd's class. We're hanging out with me in Virginia. How we doing, Mr. Kurd's class?
Hey, we're doing awesome.
All right.
We have a question from Jackson here.
How do y'all pick up the polar bears with the helicopter? Because why don't they run away from the helicopter?
I'm not sure I heard the whole thing. What was it?
He's
how
wondering
they react to the helicopter, or?
Yeah, how can you get close to them? How can you get close enough to with the sound and such from the helicopter?
Yeah, the helicopter is much faster than the polar bear. That's the thing. The polar bear will often try to run away from the helicopter, but the helicopter can fly 100 miles per hour, So you don't need much time to get down to a polar bear. Some polar bears then start running, and of course you're faster, so you get close, and you only need to be close for a very short period of time when you shoot that dart on the polar bear. Some bears are not so afraid of the helicopter. I encountered some bears that try to take the helicopter to try to catch it. So it varies. And then, of course, you can just fly close to the bear.
All right. Great question. So Hilda and Sunniva, there's someone very special, part of the Hearts in the Ice team, Ellen Kvam, who is an amazing designer living in Norway. And she's put together some amazing, signature bracelets and necklaces to help celebrate your mission through the Hearts in the Ice project. Do you want to kind of introduce Ellen, and then I'll share a little video she shared for us?
Yeah, yes, Ellen is special to us. I've known her for more than 20 years, and she has made us a necklace that is actually a little glass heart inside the ice. So she has been along with Hearts in the Ice since we started, and now she has made this very special bracelet, the polar bear bracelet that we call M bracelet, actually. So yeah, please share her statement and the pictures.
All right, excellent. So I'm going to share a little video here from Ellen, talking a little bit about, what inspires the designing work that she does and the pieces she's created for Hearts in the Ice. So here we go.
Hi, all of you Hearts in the Ice enthusiasts. I am a jewelry designer, and I come from the far northern city of Tromsø. My jewelry is inspired by nature, the northern simplicity, and by colors of the north. Hilde Strøm's interest in my jewelry is why the two of us met the first time near one of my pre-Christmas sales events almost 2 years ago. She was in a hurry and on her way to the airport in Svalbard, and as she passed me, she spotted my jewelry and she literally spun around and came over and introduced herself and her project, Heart in the Ice. Within minutes, I was on board and committed to design and produce the symbol necklace Heartbeat, and I knew immediately what to make and how to do it. The Heartbeat was well received from day one and have sold in large numbers to Hearts in the Ice supporters in all corners of the world. And also on board the Hurtigruten ships, as Hurtigruten are faithful supporters of the project as well. About 6 months after having met Hilde, I met Sunniva Sørby on board MS Nordstjernen on the trip that was to take the two women from the city Longyearbyen of Svalbard and into the wilderness and the trapper's hut Bamsebu. Many of us may have a hard time wrapping our heads around that concept of living like that. So these girls are heroes, no doubt. They were working hard, and yet they found time to come up with a new idea. The project could benefit from having a signature bracelet. This time, it was not an immediate solution as far as look and design is concerned, because it was a few requirements that they had in mind for it that introduced some challenges. It should be suitable for both men and women. Only climate-friendly materials, of course. Include something to symbolize embracing the planet. Include a polar bear. It is a very cute polar bear. They needed it to include something blue, maybe a logo. Tall order. We made the bracelet in 2 versions for variety, and we are excited about the results. I am grateful and honored to be included in the team of Heart in the Ice. It's only a joy to support these accomplished women by creating products that can help them raise funds to their important project of connecting people and for them to attend to their honest efforts and role in the conversation of climate change as citizen scientists. Thank you all for your kind attention and for letting me introduce the Hearts in the Ice Heartbeat and Hearts in the Ice brand new bracelets. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great event.
All right. Well, Jon, I know that Hilda and Sunniva have been, keeping an eye, have spotted one of the bears that you've been tracking. So I'm going to give them a moment now to talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to share the screen here because we have a picture of that bear as well. So Hilda and Sunniva, if you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a pretty spectacular day, and I don't know at what point beep came into Jon Aars' home saying where N26131 was, the female with the collar. But we learned from Jon that she was close to a glacier, not too far from Bamsebu. So we rode our Lynx snowmobiles over there, and we waited patiently. And then all of a sudden, she appeared with what looked like a not more than 15 kilo, roughly 4-month-old, precious little cub. It was a pretty amazing thing for us to experience in April. And then fast forward now in the month of July, and it was uncertain, what happened to the cub, if the female still had the cub with her. And then we saw her emerge from the water, actually, and she came right in front of Bamsebu and rolled around our insect tent, right outside that tent, and she was without cub. And Jon was able to find out, and all of this, her track is actually on the story map page at Exploring by the Sea. Joe, you've got that link. But it's pretty interesting to see how much she travels, and more or less in the same areas. And sadly, on July 13th, she showed up, but was without her cub. And I guess the theory was that perhaps the little cub died of starvation, or we're not really sure. But it's pretty amazing for us to be on the front lines of just seeing and being able to observe such an amazing a marine mammal that deserves all of our attention around such a precious area that's changing so much.
Absolutely. And so I do have that link up on the screen. If you visit this website, you can find a story map. And on that story map, we have all kinds of great information about polar bears, their ecology and all kinds of facts about them. A lot of that courtesy of Polar Bear International. And then we've got some great information about what Hilda and Sunniva have been up to, some of the citizen science projects, including some of the tracking of the polar bear. So I definitely suggest classrooms check that out this week before the holiday. So I'm going to come back from that screen share now, and we've still got some time. So I'm going to bring in some of our camera classrooms again, and we're going to grab some more questions. So let's mix things up a little bit this time. Let's go to Thunder Bay and see if our fourth grader another question for us.
It was after the female has a baby, does the male leave?
Okay. So Charlie, you probably can't hear. She was asking, after the female has the baby, do they stay as a family unit, or does the male polar bear continue on?
The male polar bear, he never see his cubs the first months at least, and he don't care about them. So they mate in spring, and then the cub get born in a den in midwinter with only the mother around. So the fathers doesn't take care of the children at all.
Okay, let's head to Calgary, Alberta, see if our fifth graders have another question. Hey, Calgary. Oh, fourth graders, my bad.
Ask your question. When you shoot them with the dart, how long do they feign?
How long are they unconscious when they're darted?
Up to 1 hour, approximately. So they fall asleep after 2, 3, 4 minutes usually, and they usually stay on the ground quite flat for at least an hour, I would say.
All right. I want to bring in our group in British Columbia and Kelowna. I saw in the chat, they've got a great question for Hilda and Sunniva about their supply. So I'm going to bring them in here. Hey, Kelowna. We're going to give you a chance to ask that question. I think it's a great one for Hilda and Sunniva.
How do Hilda and Sunniva get supplies to survive in it? Go ahead and ask this question. Oh, a little shy. How do Hilda and Sunniva get supplies to survive in the north?
Can you repeat that, Joe?
Yeah, they're curious about how you're staying supplied up there. How do you get more supplies? How did you get supplies up there to the cabin?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, we came here a month ago, and we had the supply for until May, more or less. But we actually, since the ocean is still open, it's completely dark, but the ocean is still open, and we fair that we will have difficulties in getting any resupply during the winter, because if it's not going to be solid ice, it's no option for us to get anyone in here before we're picked up in May. So we are actually having a small little boat coming from Longyearbyen with some resupply next week, if the weather allows, and if everything can happen. It's really an expedition to get down here during this this winter. So, but we have food stores that we will survive until May. We have dried food, canned food. So we will be okay, but we will be great if we get more vegetables and stuff from Longyearbyen actually now just before Christmas. So that's our goal one, and in case not, we will still be able to have an okay living with healthy food and everything we need until May.
All right. Well, fingers crossed that you are able to get that resupply, and hopefully more potato chips in that resupply, because it sounds like it's something that you're rationing right now.
Yeah, that's true. We have to be careful in case it's going to last until May. But yeah, we might get some more in December.
Excellent. Well, let's head back to Virginia and visit Mr. Kurd's class, see if they have another question for us.
Do polar bears, like when they go swim, would they like bring up fish while underwater?
Oh, so Yanni's wondering if they hunt underwater at all, or if it's just a straight get to the next spot.
I do think they try to hunt underwater a bit, but they're not that good at it. So it's like I've seen they try to hunt seals, and the seals are probably just fooling around with the bear. But what they do is they swim underwater and jump onto ice floes where you have seals and catch the seals.
All right, so it's more like a sneak attack, using the water to kind of get low and then pop up onto that ice floe.
Yeah, but there are observations of polar bears catching fish underwater, so it's not impossible that that they can take something. But the main thing when they hunt seals is to get close enough and the seals are out of the water, because the seals are much better swimmers than polar bears are.
Okay, so going back to YouTube, we have a few more questions here from YouTube. So maybe Hilda and Sunniva, you can jump on this one. This is from Mrs. Hancock's group, and they're curious about the temperature. What's the coldest temperature that you've experienced at the cabin, and does it get colder in Norway or Svalbard?
Yes, it's last year we had minus 34, and that's without the wind chill. It was, and we had a hurricane storm come in here where we thought very literally that the roof was going to be ripped off. And this is an uninsulated trapper's cabin built in 1930. So, and Joe, you were on one of those phone calls last year where you heard the wind whipping through the wallboards. So it gets really breezy in here. So we've often been sitting with down jackets on, doing our work and such.
All right. Well, Jon, this is a question that's come up from a few different groups who are tuning in with us. And, they're curious, kind of a two-parter. Do we have a rough estimate of the polar bear population today? And do you think that they, if we do end up losing the sea ice, do you think that they'll be able to, adapt and survive some kind of lifestyle on land?
So the total number of polar bears in the whole world, in the whole of Arctic, is supposed to be about 26,000 bears. And what we think is going to happen if we continue to lose sea ice, which is likely, is that polar bears will be heavily reduced in numbers and will disappear from many areas. But we do think that there will be areas where you will have polar bears still at least quite far into the future. So maybe like 100 years from now, maybe you have polar bears only in some of the areas where you have them today, particularly in the most northern parts of Canada and northwest Greenland. So that we think that they will be able to do okay in some areas, but that they will be gone in many areas. And they will change the way they live, but it's not so likely, I think, that they will be able to survive anywhere where you don't have sea ice. So it's likely that they will still depend on sea ice, because even if they can find something to eat other places, you will have other species there that are more adapted to live in those areas.
There we go. Make sure my mic's on. I think I read recently that there's an area kind of northern Canada, northern Greenland, and that could be the last area that might still have sea ice. Is there kind of that last refuge? Did I read correctly?
Yeah, that is the prediction, is that will be the last area where polar bears would be able to do okay if it gets warmer and warmer and warmer. And polar bears, they don't like too much ice. If it's like really, let's say you have 3, 4, 5 meter thick ice, they can't catch seals at all. So in some of those areas, it's too much ice today, but it will be better in the future when you get less ice. They like ice, but not too much. They will have to be able to catch seals there.
All right. So we're going to try and bring Hilda and Sunniva into the call just for a minute and see if we can see them on video. The satellite doesn't always cooperate with us, but sometimes we get just a little glimpse and they can say hi to everybody from Bamsebu. So Hilda and Sunniva, are you still on the satellite phone?
We're still on the satellite phone. We can still hear you.
Okay. Do you want to try really quickly, maybe to try and hang up the satellite phone and join? So you're not, because I'm imagining there's kind of 2 signals that are kind of taking some of the energy from you, some of the signal.
We'll hang up the satellite phone and we'll try to pop in on video. It'd be great to see everybody. We'll be right back.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So while we do wait for them to pop in, and we'll give a try, see if we can get a little video goodbye. We've got some 5th and 6th graders who are wondering how many offspring will a typical female produce in her life, and how big is her group? Is it 1, 2? What's kind of the average?
Yeah, that's a good question. They can sometimes have triplets, but it's not very common. So almost all the time they give birth to 2 cubs around New Year. And in most areas of the Arctic, if the cubs don't die, so that if at least 1 cub survives. Hello?
Jon, I just want to interrupt you just for a moment. We've got Hilda on video from Bamsebu. It worked. Very cool. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it's great to see the 2 of you.
Hello. Nice to see you.
It's fantastic.
Great
and I have to hi, Jon.
Hi, Jon.
Hello.
Great to see both of you.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to see you.
Tusen tack, Jon.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure having you on the call, Jon. It's
nice
such
to be
a
here.
privilege for us to be part of what you guys are doing in the Norwegian Polar Institute.
Thanks a lot. The same.
All right. Well, Jon, do you want to finish, kind of wrap
So,
up?
in the spirit of Christmas, we have the world's smallest Christmas tree here for everybody.
Whoa. Nice.
Very cool. I'm glad you're able to celebrate, and it's really cool to be able to see the 2 of you, which we couldn't do last year. So even in just a year, the technology has gotten a little bit better for us.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal, actually. And we're trying to keep the spirit of the little polar bears alive. We have our own little mascot here. So
nice. All right. Well, Jon, if you want to finish, you were just kind of telling us a little bit about the how many cubs the female can have and in her lifetime. And then maybe we'll let Hilda and Sunniva kind of wrap up with a final word.
Yeah, so what I was to say is that if the cub survived, then the female is having 1 litter every 3rd year.
Perfect.
So let's say that she get 15 years time to reproduce, that's maybe the most, then she might get 5 litters. But if she loses some litters, she might get more. So she might get 10 cubs in her lifetime, and a few might get more, maybe 14, 15 cubs.
All right. Well, Hilda and Sunniva, since we have you on camera and everything seems to be working, let's get a final word before we log off with our classrooms.
Okay. Yeah. And super. Thank you so much, Joe. You host these calls for us twice a month, and you are just a star. And Jon, thank you very much. We've got our next call coming up January 14th in a new year. And I think appropriately so. The title is on mental and physical health. So, we can't take care of the wildlife or our planet unless play.
Yeah, and get involved. Be curious. Maybe you will start to study something like polar bears or anything else that's important to know about because
Okay, I think we may have run out of our luck. I think we may have lost that connection. But Jon, that's, last year we could barely connect via satellite phone. It used to drop out on us. So to be able to have a nice, clean satellite call and then even have them join in at the end is pretty cool to be able to see them. So I did share the Hearts in the Ice, the exploringbycedar.com /HITI, Hearts in the Ice. So you can find those January events. We'll be doing events January through May with different experts joining Hilda and Sunniva. So it should be a lot of fun. We look forward to seeing your classrooms joining in. I want to give a big shout out to all the groups who joined us via YouTube today. We had tons, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of students joining us from classrooms across North America. A big shout out to all of our camera classrooms. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let me bring a few of them up. Kind of a big, there they are. Thanks, camera classroom, for joining us. It was awesome to see you. And Yoon, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your research. Thank you for the work that you're doing, kind of keeping tabs on polar bears in the north. It was a lot of fun to get to meet you and share the work that you're doing.
Nice to be here. Nice to see all of you.
And perfect timing. Hilda and Sunniva have just called back in via the satellite phone. Hilda and Sunniva, we're just wrapping up the event, but we want to be able to say goodbye to you before we do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to every single person that joined the call today. And thanks again to you, Jon and Joe.
Thanks, the same.
All right. Well, I do want to give one more shout out. Thank you so much to Canada Goose for sponsoring the events this month. A huge shout out to Polar Bears International for the great content that they have sent our way. So if you do visit the site, you can find the story map and tons of information about polar bears and all the citizen science projects that Hilda and Sunniva are working on in the north. So big shout out to everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Hilda, Sunniva, thank you so much. Stay warm. Fingers crossed the shipment, the supplies make it to you. And Yoon, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, all of you, and thanks again for this hour. And we will stay safe from polar bears, and you guys out there stay safe from COVID and any other challenges. So stay safe, everyone, and stay curious.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. We are signing off for today.